Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Stoic Saga. Let's be honest. Negative thinking is one of the most silent forms of self-destruction. It poisons your peace, kills your momentum, and makes you doubt your worth. But here's the hard truth. Your mind is not your enemy. It's just untrained. The ancient Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, didn't wait for motivation or miracles. They built mental fortresses in times of chaos. They learned to control their frame, to see pain as a teacher, and to detach from what was never in their command. For them, mastering the mind wasn't philosophy, it was survival. In today's episode, we'll uncover 7 brutal Stoic laws that will kill negative thinking and completely rewire your mindset. These laws are not gentle. They're sharp, direct, and liberating. If you practice them, you'll stop overthinking, stop reacting, and start commanding your mind with calm authority. Stay with me until the end, because the final law, the one about rewriting your story, is the most transformative of them all. And before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to Stoic Saga, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice in this community adds strength, and together, we're building a generation that leads with wisdom, calm, and courage. Law 1. Attack the root, not the symptom. Negative thinking is not a storm that comes from nowhere. It's a leak in the structure of your mind that has been dripping for years. The Stoics understood this long before psychology gave it names. They believed that suffering is rarely caused by events themselves, but by the meanings we attach to them, the unchecked beliefs we allow to fester, and the habits of thought we repeat unconsciously. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The first law of mastering your mind is to stop fighting the smoke and find the fire. Attack the root, not the symptom. Most people treat negative thoughts like surface problems. They distract themselves, drown the noise with comfort, or repeat empty affirmations while ignoring the deeper cause. But as Seneca said, "No wind is favorable to the sailor who does not know his port." If you don't understand the source of your suffering, every attempt at peace will fail. Negative thinking is not random. It's rooted in patterns, fear of loss, need for approval, comparison, or self-doubt. Until you identify which one drives you, you'll spend your life reacting to shadows instead of addressing the source. Epictetus gave one of the most practical tools for this law. He taught his students to challenge every impression the mind presents. When a thought arises, "I'm not good enough. Everything is falling apart. They don't respect me," he would say, "Wait, is this thought true? Is it within my control? Does it serve virtue or weaken it?" This small pause separates the thinker from the thought. It transforms chaos into clarity. Instead of being swept away by emotion, you dissect it. You examine where it comes from, and once exposed, it loses power. Negative thinking often grows from avoidance. We fear facing the truth of our wounds, so we cover them with distractions. But Stoicism teaches the opposite: go toward the discomfort. Marcus Aurelius didn't run from pain. He studied it. He saw every challenge as a mirror reflecting what still needed discipline. The Stoic mind doesn't suppress emotion, it investigates it. Why am I angry? Why am I jealous? Why am I afraid? These questions cut through the fog and reveal the root. Once identified, the emotion transforms from an enemy into a teacher. The reason this law feels brutal is that it demands honesty. You can't heal what you keep hiding. You can't silence negativity by pretending it's not there. You must look directly at it, without judgment, without denial, and ask, What belief is feeding this? Perhaps your anxiety comes from the illusion of control, your anger from unmet expectations, your sadness from attachment to what's gone. When you trace the feeling back to its belief, the belief can be replaced with truth. That's how Stoicism rewires the mind, from falsehood to clarity. This law also applies to how you interpret daily struggles. When something goes wrong, instead of reacting, step back and ask, what is this event showing me about my mind? Every external challenge reveals an internal weakness. Someone disrespects you, your ego feels threatened. You fail a goal, your identity was tied to success. You lose someone's approval. You realize how dependent you've become on validation. The event isn't the cause of pain, it's the flashlight showing you where your attachments live. Epictetus urged his students to treat life as a training ground. What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about these things. Negative thinking is just judgment repeated so often, it feels like truth. To attack the root, you must change the judgment. Replace "this is unfair" with "this is life testing my endurance." Replace "I failed" with "I learned what didn't work." Replace "they hurt me" with "they revealed my expectations." You're not denying reality, you're reframing it to serve growth instead of despair. Practical Stoic exercises can help. Begin with morning reflection. List your recurring negative thoughts. For each one, write the belief that powers it. Then question that belief. Is this within my control? Is it helping me live with virtue? Is it aligned with truth? Most will collapse under scrutiny. Evening journaling then closes the loop. Record moments when negativity tried to take over and how you responded. Over time, the pattern becomes visible, and what is visible becomes conquerable. Habit also plays a role. The brain, like a muscle, strengthens what it repeats. If you rehearse fear and doubt daily, they become your default. If you rehearse calm analysis and gratitude, those become your reflex. The Stoics trained themselves to question, to pause, to reframe. It wasn't natural. It was cultivated through repetition. You can do the same. Every time a negative thought appears, treat it as a signal. Here's my training opportunity. Attack the root. Don't react to the noise. So remember this law. Peace is not found in avoiding storms, but in understanding their origin. When you see where the leak begins, you stop wasting effort mopping the floor. You fix the pipe. The Stoics didn't chase comfort. They chased truth. And truth, though sometimes brutal, is the only thing that sets you free. Attack the root, not the symptom. Because when you face the real cause of your suffering, the noise fades, the fog clears, and what's left is calm, earned, unshakable, and yours. Law 2. Control the frame, or be controlled by it. The Stoics believed that life itself is neutral. It has no built-in meaning, no inherent label of good or bad. What creates suffering or peace is the frame we use to interpret it. Two people can face the same storm. One grows stronger, the other breaks apart. The difference isn't in the event, it's in the perception. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That sentence is a declaration of war against victimhood. You cannot control the wind, but you can control the sail. You cannot choose every circumstance, but you can always choose your frame. This law is brutal because it destroys excuses. The mind wants to blame circumstances. It's easier to say, "I'm unhappy because of them," than to admit, "I am suffering because of how I'm thinking." But Stoicism calls for radical responsibility. You don't control the world, but you do control the lens through which you view it. When you change that lens, everything changes. Seneca saw this truth clearly. He said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." What he meant was that we amplify pain by adding unnecessary judgment. The event is one thing, the story we attach to it is another. When someone insults you, the insult itself lasts seconds. But the replaying of it in your mind for days or weeks, that is the suffering you choose. When you fail at something, the failure is a single moment. But the self-punishment that follows, the internal narrative of "I'm worthless," is the cage you build. Controlling the frame means ending that self-inflicted suffering. Epictetus taught his students that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. The world will give you discomfort, loss, failure, and betrayal. But how you frame those experiences decides whether they destroy or strengthen you. He urged his students to remember the dichotomy of control. Things outside your command are not worth your emotional investment. Things within it are where your freedom lies. The frame, therefore, is your shield. Through it, you reinterpret pain as training, obstacles as exercises, and insults as tests of composure. The Stoics practiced reframing constantly. When faced with hardship, they asked, "What if this is happening for me, not to me?" When facing insult, they asked, "What does this reveal about me?" When losing something, they said, "I never owned it. I only borrowed it for a time." Through this perspective, suffering became growth, loss became gratitude, and every obstacle became a chance to exercise virtue. Modern psychology now mirrors this Stoic wisdom. Cognitive reframing, changing the meaning you assign to events, is one of the most powerful ways to defeat anxiety and depression. But the Stoics discovered it over 2,000 years ago. They didn't wait for therapy. They trained their minds daily. The frame is your mental filter. Everything that enters your perception passes through it. If it's distorted, you'll see threat and misery everywhere. If it's trained, you'll find purpose even in pain. Controlling the frame does not mean lying to yourself. Stoicism is not about denial or toxic positivity. It's about clarity. It's about stripping events of unnecessary emotion so you can respond with reason. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, loss, and betrayal, yet wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." He didn't pretend the pain wasn't there. He simply refused to give it meaning beyond what was true. How can you apply this law in your daily life? Start by catching the story your mind tells after an event. You get criticized at work. Before reacting, ask, "What story am I creating right now? Is this story serving me or trapping me?" If your narrative turns one sentence of criticism into a complete attack on your worth, rewrite it. This is feedback, not rejection. You lose something you love. Instead of "life is unfair," reframe it as, "I was lucky to have had it at all." You fail at a goal. Instead of "I'm not capable," say, "Now I know how not to do it." The event didn't change, your story did. And in that new story lies your freedom. Reframing is a skill built through repetition. At first, your old stories will fight back. The mind clings to drama because it makes you feel important. But drama is poison disguised as comfort. The more you practice reframing, the less grip those stories have. Over time, your instinct will shift. You'll begin to see setbacks not as curses, but as sharpening stones for your character. Seneca called adversity a training ground for the soul. He wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests the brave." That is framing at its highest level. When life burns, you can either see ashes or purification. When people attack you, you can either see insult or instruction. The external world doesn't determine your peace, your perception does. So remember this law: if you don't control the frame controls you. Every thought, every emotion, every reaction passes through the lens of interpretation. Train that lens. Refuse to see chaos as cruelty. Refuse to see pain as punishment. See it all as material for growth, and suddenly the world loses its power to break you. The Stoics weren't immune to suffering. They simply redefined it. That's what made them unstoppable. You can do the same. Control the frame, and nothing outside you can control your peace. Law 3. Build a mind that's a fortress, not a doorway. The Stoics understood something most people today have forgotten: that your mind is sacred territory. It is the inner citadel, the last domain of freedom, and it must be guarded with the same discipline a warrior guards a fortress. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner fortress, the place no insult, no loss, no failure could penetrate unless you left the gates open. But most people don't guard the gates at all. They let every opinion, every piece of fear-driven news, every comment on social media walk in and rearrange the furniture of their thoughts. They absorb everything, then wonder why they feel anxious, restless, and weak. Stoicism teaches your peace depends on your boundaries, not just physical ones, but mental ones. A fortress has walls, structure, and discipline. It lets in what strengthens and defends against what corrupts. That's how your mind must operate. Yet many live like open doorways, constantly reacting to gossip, opinions, or negativity that doesn't even belong to them. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." In other words, nothing enters unless you grant permission. This is the essence of mental sovereignty, learning to control entry. Seneca warned that we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Those who leave their minds open to every influence let imaginary suffering invade daily. You hear one negative comment, and it becomes a whole narrative of self-doubt. You read one article about the economy, and you spiral into fear about your future. These aren't external attacks, they're intrusions you allowed. The Stoic way is to inspect every thought like a guard at the gate. When a thought arrives, ask, is this strengthening my virtue or weakening it? Is this within my control or outside it? If it's poison, don't let it in. Think of your attention as the currency of your soul. Where you spend it determines what grows inside you. The world today is designed to steal that attention. Algorithms, media, conversations, all pulling you into emotional reactions. Marcus Aurelius faced distractions too, even as Emperor of Rome, yet he trained himself to return to stillness. "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he wrote. "Realize this, and you will find strength." That is the Stoic practice, to bring your focus back home, to the fortress within, where no external chaos can dictate your inner order. Building a fortress mind begins with awareness. Notice how much of your mental energy is spent on things you can't control: other people's behavior, outcomes, politics, opinions, mistakes of the past. Every time your mind wanders there, you weaken the walls. Each distraction is a small crack that allows anxiety to seep in. To rebuild strength, withdraw your attention from what's uncontrollable and redirect it to what's actionable. Your response, your preparation, your discipline. The more you practice this redirection, the thicker your walls become. Next comes the discipline of information. Seneca advised, "Associate with those who may make you better." In today's world, that means choosing what enters your mind as carefully as you choose your friends. What you read, watch, or listen to is mental nutrition. Feed your mind chaos, and you'll produce chaos. Feed it wisdom, and you'll produce clarity. Guard the inputs, because they form the foundation of your inner dialogue, and your inner dialogue shapes your reality. Epictetus trained his students to treat opinions like external noise, irrelevant unless examined. Someone insults you. That's merely a sound. Your reaction gives it meaning. Someone doubts you? That's their thought, not your truth. The fortress mind filters, not absorbs. You can hear criticism and learn from it, but you don't let it corrode your peace. This separation between hearing and absorbing is the mark of strength. To live as a mental fortress also means solitude, not isolation, but intentional withdrawal to rebuild your defenses. Marcus Aurelius practiced daily reflection, moments of silence to realign his thoughts before returning to the world. Without that practice, even an emperor's mind could crumble. You need your own version of that solitude, time each day to empty the noise and reinforce clarity. Whether it's through journaling, meditation, or quiet walks, these moments are how you repair the walls of your fortress. And remember, a fortress is not just defense, it's also command. It gives you height and vision. From within your stronghold you see clearly. You're no longer reacting blindly to every storm. You respond with precision. That's why Stoic calm isn't emotionless, it's strategic. When your mind is fortified, you don't need to shout, prove, or chase. You observe, decide, and act from stability. The world becomes less about control and more about alignment. The modern world confuses openness with wisdom, but unfiltered openness leads to chaos. Wisdom is selective. It knows what to allow and what to block. The Stoics were not closed-minded. They were disciplined. They absorbed truth, not noise, compassion, not pity, facts, not fear. That's how they remained unshaken in times of war, loss, and betrayal. So remember this law: build a mind that's a fortress, not a doorway. Every thought you accept, every opinion you let in, shapes who you become. Guard your gates with vigilance. Let in what uplifts, discard what weakens. Because the strongest mind isn't one that never faces attack, it's one that can never be conquered. When the world screams for your attention, stay still. When others panic, stand firm. When doubt knocks, inspect it before letting it inside. The Stoics knew that freedom begins in the fortress of the mind. Build yours strong, and no storm will ever breach it. Law 4. Detach from what you can't command. The Stoics built their entire philosophy on one simple but brutal truth. Most of what happens in life is not under your control. Epictetus called this understanding the foundation of freedom. Some things are in our control and others are not, he said. Within our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever are our own actions. Not in our control are body, property, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. This wasn't a poetic idea. It was a map of liberation. The more you fight to control what's not yours, the more miserable you become. The moment you detach from what you can't command, you begin to taste real peace. But detachment in the Stoic sense is not coldness. It's not withdrawal from love or life. It's the refusal to chain your happiness to uncertainty. You can care deeply without clinging desperately. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, buried children, faced betrayal, and yet remained calm, not because he didn't feel, but because he understood that his emotions could not change reality. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The entire world could crumble around him, and still his mind remained his kingdom. People often confuse attachment with love, control with care, and obsession with commitment. Stoicism destroys that illusion. True love, true excellence, and true peace require detachment. Because when your identity depends on outcomes you don't command, whether it's the success of a project, the affection of a person, or the approval of others, you give away your inner authority. You become a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Epictetus would call this slavery, not physical, but mental. Freedom, he said, is not the ability to do whatever you want. It's the ability to want only what aligns with reason and virtue. To detach from what you can't command, start by recognizing how small your sphere of control actually is. You can't dictate how people treat you, but you can choose how you respond. You can't control the economy, but you can control your preparation. You can't stop aging, but you can control how you use your time. Once you see this distinction clearly, anxiety loses its grip. Seneca wrote, "He suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary." Most of our suffering comes from trying to manage what never belonged to us in the first place. Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It means focus. It means directing your energy where it matters instead of wasting it where it doesn't. The Stoics didn't sit back and do nothing. They acted powerfully, but only within their sphere of control. They believed action without attachment was the highest form of strength. You do your duty fully, release your grip on the result, and trust that nature will take care of the rest. This is not fatalism. It's freedom from delusion. Think about how much of your frustration comes from misplaced control. You want someone to change. You want the past to be different. You want certainty about the future. Each of these desires is a battle against reality, and reality always wins. The Stoic learns to shift focus from outcomes to effort. You can't command the harvest, but you can command the planting. You can't command the weather, but you can command your preparation for it. The wise invest energy only in what can actually be influenced, and that's why they live lighter. Marcus Aurelius had a phrase for this: "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs?" This wasn't submission, it was alignment. Life flows according to a rhythm larger than you. To resist it is to break yourself against the current. To flow with it is to move in harmony with nature. Detachment is the art of flowing without losing direction. This law also applies deeply to relationships. Many people suffer because they attach their peace to how others behave. If they love me, I'm happy. If they don't, I'm broken. That is the mindset of dependency. The Stoic path says, love others, but do not need them. Care deeply, but remain whole without them. This kind of love is stronger, not weaker. It's rooted in freedom, not fear. When you no longer beg for connection, you create it naturally. When you no longer cling to approval, your presence becomes magnetic. Detachment doesn't end love. It purifies it. In modern life, detachment is the antidote to chaos. The world trains you to react to everything, to every notification, every insult, every uncertainty. Detachment trains you to pause, to breathe, and to ask, is this within my control? If not, let it pass. This single discipline can save you years of wasted energy. Epictetus advised his students to begin each day expecting loss. When you kiss your child, say to yourself, tomorrow it may die. To modern ears, this sounds cruel, but to the Stoic, it's compassion rooted in truth. By remembering impermanence, you stop clinging to what cannot be kept. You love more deeply because you no longer fear losing. Practical detachment can begin in small ways. When plans change, practice acceptance. When someone disagrees, don't rush to defend your ego. When failure comes, see it as data, not doom. Each act of letting go strengthens your mind. Over time, you realize that detachment is not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. You still feel joy, sadness, and love, but none of them control you. The Stoics often compared the ideal mind to a ship anchored in calm waters. The winds of fate may blow, the waves may rise, but the anchor, your reason, your values, keeps you steady. Detachment is that anchor. Without it, you drift with every emotional current. With it, you become immovable. So remember this law. Detach from what you can't command. Don't chase control where none exists. Don't resist change that's already happened. Don't cling to outcomes that were never yours. Your peace, your discipline, and your freedom all live inside your control, not beyond it. Once you understand this, the noise of the world quiets, and what remains is calm, power, and clarity. Marcus Aurelius called this the serenity of the soul, the state where nothing external can disturb you because you no longer depend on it. That serenity is not a dream. It's a choice you can make daily. Detach from what you can't command, and you'll finally command yourself. Law 5. Turn pain into power. The Stoics saw pain not as punishment, but as potential, raw, unrefined energy waiting to be transformed. To them, suffering was never a reason to collapse, but a call to awaken. Marcus Aurelius, facing the death of his children, betrayal of allies, and the weight of ruling an empire, never cursed his misfortunes. He wrote instead, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. That single sentence captures the essence of this law. Pain is not your enemy. It's your material. What you do with it decides whether it breaks you or builds you. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid discomfort. They fear emotional pain, failure, rejection, loss. But avoidance is the breeding ground of weakness. The Stoics believed that whatever you flee grows stronger, and whatever you face loses its power. Pain ignored becomes fear. Pain studied becomes wisdom. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. If you run from pain, you remain fragile. If you engage it with courage and reason, it becomes your greatest teacher." To turn pain into power, you must first accept it. This sounds simple, but it's the hardest step. We waste energy resisting reality, saying, "This shouldn't have happened." But Stoicism rejects that phrase completely. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You can endure anything your nature allows you to endure." Life doesn't owe you comfort. It offers you challenge so that you may evolve. Every hardship is training for the soul. When you accept that, pain stops feeling like chaos and starts feeling like purpose. Epictetus taught this law through experience. He was born a slave, beaten and crippled, yet became one of the greatest philosophers in history. His power came from refusing to waste pain. He said, "I must die. Must I then die groaning too?" That line captures Stoic strength perfectly. You can't always choose your suffering, but you can always choose your response. That choice is where transformation begins. Turning pain into power is not about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about refusing to let it define you. The Stoic doesn't numb emotion, he studies it. pain becomes a form of data, information about what matters most. When you lose someone you love, the grief reveals your capacity to care. When you fail at something, the disappointment reveals your desire to grow. Every wound contains wisdom, but only if you're brave enough to look directly at it. Pain also exposes the illusions you live under. You think you're strong until life tests you. You think you're humble until you're humiliated. You think you're patient until everything delays. These moments are not cruelty, they're clarity. They strip away the lies you tell yourself and show you exactly who you are. That truth may sting, but it's sacred. As Seneca said, fire tests gold, adversity tests the brave. When you stop running from pain, something extraordinary happens. It starts working for you. The same energy that once drowned you now fuels you. Every scar becomes a reminder, every setback a source of discipline. You begin to see life differently, not as something happening to you, but through you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything thrown into it." That is the Stoic mindset. Whatever the world throws at you, loss, failure, insult, rejection, you burn it into fuel. To practice this, the Stoics used a method called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. They would imagine the worst-case scenarios not to become pessimistic, but to strengthen resilience. By facing pain mentally before it arrives, they robbed it of surprise. Seneca wrote, "He who fears death will never do anything worth a man." The Stoics didn't fear pain because they rehearsed it, understood it, and accepted it as part of the natural order. You can do the same. Visualize challenges before they come. See yourself responding with calm and strength. When they do arrive, you'll recognize them not as enemies, but as familiar teachers. Pain, when processed correctly, becomes focus. It strips away the unnecessary. When you've been through hardship, you stop chasing distractions. You value simplicity, peace, clarity. You stop needing approval because you've already survived disapproval. You stop fearing loss because you've learned to rebuild. Pain, paradoxically, is what teaches freedom. In practical terms, start by asking this question whenever you face struggle. How can I use this? Use rejection to build independence. Use failure to refine your craft. Use loss to deepen compassion. Use setbacks to strengthen patience. Every ounce of pain can be recycled into purpose if you refuse to waste it. The Stoics believed life is a forge. Every challenge is a hammer strike shaping you into something unbreakable. Remember this law: turn pain into power. Don't numb it, don't deny it, and don't dramatize it. Study it, channel it, transmute it. The Stoic path is not about avoiding suffering. It's about becoming so disciplined that suffering becomes raw material for greatness. Because here's the ultimate truth: pain will visit everyone, but power only belongs to those who use it. When you can take what was meant to hurt you and make it your strength, you no longer fear anything. You no longer flinch when life tests you. You become what the Stoics called invictus, unconquered. So the next time pain knocks, don't ask, "Why me?" Ask, "What can I build with this?" Then build. Because every scar you turn into strength becomes proof that you didn't just survive, you evolved. Law 6. Let silence be your superpower. The Stoics understood something that modern society has almost entirely forgotten: that silence is not emptiness, but control. In a world where everyone is desperate to speak, defend, prove, and explain, the one who stays silent holds the real power. Silence is composure made visible. It's the sound of discipline. It's the armor that shields your peace from chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote, Don't waste your time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. That single sentence cuts through the noise. While others debate, you act. While others react, you observe. While others shout, you listen. That is the essence of Stoic silence, not weakness, but mastery. People today mistake silence for passivity, when in truth, it's the highest form of strength. To stay quiet when insulted, to hold your ground when misunderstood, to walk away instead of explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you, that's power. The weak need to prove themselves constantly. The strong are content with truth. Seneca wrote, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." The Stoics trained themselves to recognize that distinction. They knew that words can either clarify or destroy. Most of the time they destroy. Epictetus, who was once enslaved, learned to survive through silence. He said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Silence gave him observation. Observation gave him understanding. And understanding gave him control. When you speak less, you see more. You notice patterns others miss, in yourself, in people, in the world. That awareness becomes an edge sharper than any argument. Letting silence become your superpower requires ego death. The ego wants the last word. It wants to be right. It wants to be seen, heard, acknowledged. But the Stoic kills the ego through restraint. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. In the face of mortality, proving yourself becomes meaningless. Why waste words on what doesn't matter? Why argue over what time will erase?" Silence also protects your energy. Every word you release is energy spent. Every reaction is focus lost. The Stoics saw speech as a tool, not a reflex. They spoke with precision, like an archer releasing arrows one by one. Today, most people shoot arrows blindly. They react, rant, post, and argue endlessly. The result? Exhaustion. The Stoic remains silent, conserving his strength for what truly deserves it. When he speaks, his words carry the weight of discipline behind them, and that's why people listen. Seneca wrote that anger is a short madness. Silence is the cure for that madness. When you hold your tongue in moments of rage, you prevent chaos from multiplying. Every conflict is 2 egos clashing. Remove one, and the fire dies. That's why silence disarms others so powerfully. It confuses the reactive, it exposes their insecurity, and it reminds them, without you saying a word, that you're not playing their game. But silence is not only for conflict, it's also the breeding ground for wisdom. The Stoics valued introspection, the quiet study of the self. They practiced evening reflection, reviewing their day in stillness. Marcus Aurelius would write to himself every night, dissecting his thoughts and actions. That practice wasn't noise, it was inner dialogue born from silence. You cannot hear truth if your mind is always shouting. Wisdom doesn't compete with volume, it grows in stillness. To make silence your superpower, start with awareness. Notice how often you feel the urge to respond, to defend, to explain, to fill the space. Each urge is a test. The more you resist it, the more powerful you become. Practice delaying your responses. Count to 3 before speaking when emotional. Observe how quickly the tension dissolves when you choose quiet over chaos. The mind that can stay still when provoked is unshakable. Silence also gives you mystery, an invisible gravity that draws respect. People trust what they cannot easily read. They respect what doesn't need validation. The less you say, the more they wonder. The more you speak, the more predictable you become. Marcus Aurelius lived by restraint. As emperor, he held the power to command armies, yet he commanded himself first. His silence wasn't absence, it was presence. That's why his words, few as they were, still echo through millennia. In the modern age, silence is rebellion. Everyone wants attention. No one wants depth. Everyone wants to be heard. Few want to listen. The Stoic chooses the opposite. He listens more, speaks less, and acts better. He lets his discipline make the noise. That is the paradox of power. The quieter you become, the louder your impact grows. Remember this law. Let silence be your superpower. Don't speak to fill space. Don't argue to win approval. Don't reveal every thought. Your restraint is not weakness, it's wisdom. It unsettles those ruled by impulse and inspires those seeking strength. When the world shouts, whisper truth through action. When they provoke, smile in stillness. When they question your calm, let your results answer for you. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of control. And when you master that, you no longer chase power, you are power. Law 7. Rewrite the story you live under. Every human being lives under a story, a silent script that shapes every thought, decision, and emotion. Most people never realize it, yet it runs their lives like a hidden program. The Stoics knew this truth deeply. They believed that freedom doesn't come from changing your circumstances, but from changing your interpretation of them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." In other words, your suffering is not caused by the events around you. It's caused by the story you tell yourself about those events. The same reality can feel like a tragedy or a triumph, depending on the narrative you live under. You see, everyone inherits a story, from family, culture, failure, or trauma. Some grow up believing they are victims of life, others that they must prove their worth endlessly, others that happiness lies in control, achievement, or approval. These stories might have helped once, but eventually they become prisons. Stoicism invites you to tear down that prison and write your own philosophy of life, one based not on reaction, but on reason. Seneca said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." The imagination he spoke of is the story we tell ourselves, that things are worse than they are, that we are smaller than we are, that we have no choice. To rewrite your story, you must first see it clearly. The Stoic practice begins with awareness. Pay attention to your inner dialogue, the constant commentary your mind produces. When something goes wrong, what's the first thing you tell yourself? This always happens to me. I'm unlucky. I can't handle this. Each of these phrases reveals the story you live under. They are not truth, they are programming. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to catch these automatic judgments. He would pause and reframe. Is this within my control? If yes, he acted. If no, he accepted. That is how he rewrote the story of every hardship. Instead of, "This is unfair," he said, "This is part of my training." Instead of, "I lost something," he said, "It was never mine to keep." Through this discipline, he transformed every page of life, even the painful ones, into wisdom. Rewriting your story requires courage because it means letting go of the comfort of blame. The victim's story is seductive. It gives you someone to fault, a reason to stay the same. But the Stoics saw blame as bondage. Epictetus reminded his students, "When you blame others for your troubles, you give them power over you." Freedom begins when you take ownership, not of what happened, but of how you choose to interpret it. You may not control the plot life gives you, but you always control the meaning. Pain, failure, and loss. These are inevitable chapters. But the Stoic knows they don't define the book. The book is defined by what you decide those chapters mean. When Seneca was exiled by Emperor Claudius, he didn't see it as punishment. He saw it as liberation from the corruption of politics. In solitude, he wrote his greatest works. When Epictetus was enslaved, he didn't write a story of despair. He wrote one of mastery, showing that no one can imprison a free mind. When Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal and war, he didn't frame it as injustice. He framed it as practice for patience and virtue. Each of them faced unimaginable pain, yet each rewrote the meaning until pain became progress. That's the power of this law. To apply it, begin by questioning your old narratives. When you hear yourself say, "I'm not good enough," ask, "According to whom?" When you think, "I always fail," ask, "Always or just sometimes?" When you catch yourself saying, "They ruined my peace," ask, "Or did I give it to them?" These questions weaken the old story's authority. Then replace the script deliberately. I am learning. I am rebuilding. I am becoming. This is not self-deception. It's self-liberation. You're not inventing fantasy. You're reclaiming authorship. The Stoics practiced this rewriting through journaling. Each night, Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not for others, but to remind himself of the story he wanted to live by: calm, duty, gratitude, and courage. You can do the same. Write down your current story, the one your mind repeats when life feels heavy. Then write the version the Stoics would choose, one of responsibility, peace, and strength. Repeat it until it becomes habit, because stories, once rewritten and rehearsed, become reality. Modern neuroscience now confirms what the Stoics knew intuitively: thoughts create pathways. The story you repeat rewires your brain. If you keep saying life is unfair, your mind will filter evidence to prove it. But if you train yourself to see obstacles as lessons, your brain will find meaning in them. The Stoic practice isn't mystical, it's neurological discipline. You choose the language, and the brain obeys. But this law goes deeper than motivation. It's about identity. The story you live under decides who you become. If you constantly tell yourself that you're broken, your actions will reflect defeat. If you tell yourself you're being shaped by adversity, your actions will reflect purpose. The Stoics believed virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control was not something you achieved, but something you chose to live as. Rewriting your story means living as the person you aspire to be long before the world confirms it. So remember this law: rewrite the story you live under. Life is not the author, you are. Events provide the ink, but you decide what gets written. You can keep replaying old pain, or you can turn it into power. You can stay the victim of circumstance, or you can become the author of meaning. That is Stoic freedom, the ability to define your experience instead of being defined by it. Marcus Aurelius called this the art of living. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. So guard your thoughts as a writer guards his words. Choose them with purpose, refine them with reason, and live them with integrity. The world will still test you, but it will never again control your story. When you master this, you stop reacting to life. You begin directing it. And that's how the Stoics lived, not as victims of fate, but as sculptors of it. The pen is in your hand. Don't let your past hold it. Write something worthy of your strength." We've reached the end, my friends. 7 brutal Stoic laws that, if lived, can completely rewire your mind, not by giving you comfort, but by giving you control. because that's what Stoicism really is. Not a philosophy of escape, but a discipline of engagement. It doesn't promise a life without storms. It teaches you how to stand still inside them. Rule after rule, you've seen a pattern, that strength is not about force, but understanding. You learn to attack the root instead of the symptom, to stop treating your emotions like random fires, and start finding where the spark truly begins. You learn to control the frame, to take back authority over meaning itself, because nothing in life carries pain or joy until your perception gives it shape. You learn to build your mind as a fortress, not a doorway, to stop letting every opinion, fear, and doubt walk in freely. You learn to detach from what you can't command, to love deeply without clinging, to act fully without depending on outcomes. You learn to turn pain into power, to make every scar a source of light instead of darkness. You learn that silence is not weakness, but the sound of wisdom. And finally, you learn to rewrite the story you live under, to stop being a character in someone else's narrative and become the author of your own. The Stoics weren't gods or saints. They were human, tested by betrayal, poverty, loss, and fear, but they refused to surrender their inner world to outer chaos. They proved that calm is not a gift, it's a skill, that peace is not found, it's built, and that every moment you choose reason over reaction, you are practicing the art of mastery. So as you leave this episode, I want you to remember, every thought is training, every emotion is feedback, every day is a test of your philosophy, and you, right now, have the same tools Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus had. You have the ability to rule yourself. That's where true freedom begins. If this message resonated, subscribe to Stoic Saga, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which of these 7 Stoic laws do you need to start practicing today? Let's build a community of strength, wisdom, and calm minds in a chaotic world. Because in the end, the goal is not to escape life, it's to face it unshaken. The storms will come, but when they do, you'll stand firm, not because the world got easier, but because you got stronger. Rebuild your mind, rewire your perception, rise through discipline. This is Stoicism, timeless, unbreakable, and yours to live.